I consider myself very fortunate. I was born into a loving and average family. However, my mom experienced a difficult childbirth, and as a result, she could not have any more children. This situation led her to pour all her love and affection onto me. Growing up, I was surrounded by happiness and embraced my parents' affection. Yet they were aware of the dangers of excessive pampering and understood that it could hinder my ability to navigate the real world. They witnessed many examples of such behavior and were determined to ensure that I didn't become a spoiled egoist. With this in mind, they took various measures to teach me self-reliance. My mom encouraged me to join different clubs and activities, even though I never stuck with any of them. However, it was during a 7th grade pioneer camp that I first encountered the mesmerizing sound of a guitar, and it was love at first strum. I couldn't get the guitar out of my mind, so when fall came, I gathered the courage to ask my mother to enroll me in a music studio to learn how to play it. Considering my track record with clubs and activities, my request made my mother skeptical. However, she eventually agreed and enrolled me in guitar classes for a 6-month course. After graduating from high school, I made the decision to join the Army, believing that the discipline and resilience it would instill in me would be valuable for my future. Following my required service, I returned to civilian life as a courageous senior sergeant, proudly carrying my red beret with me. To my surprise, my girlfriend had patiently waited for my return in our hometown, resisting the temptation to pursue a relationship with someone of higher rank. I was grateful for her loyalty and commitment. With nearly a month of leave from the Army, I secured a job at a machine tool factory as a turner. Simultaneously, I enrolled in a correspondence program at Polytechnic University to pursue my passion for mechanical engineering and technology. In addition to these pursuits, I married my beloved girlfriend. We exchanged vows at the district registry office on December 6th, and the following September, our son, Yuri, was born. Misha, short for Michalina and Michelle, was the unique name of my cherished wife. After our wedding, she dedicated a year to completing her studies at a construction technical school, with plans to pursue further education at a specialized university. I admired her determination and knew that she would achieve great things. We led a modest lifestyle, falling into the middle income bracket. While I worked diligently at the factory, I also took on evening gigs at a restaurant to supplement our finances. I did everything I could to support Misha with the baby, even waking up at night to feed him. There were moments when exhaustion overwhelmed me, and I would unintentionally doze off with my head resting on the dining table while warming baby food in a pot of hot water. As time passed, our son grew, and Misha began preparing for her exams. In August, she left for the capital city to pursue her education. Within a week, I received the news that she had successfully passed her entrance exams and had been accepted into her desired program. I couldn't have been prouder of her achievements. And so, I made the decision to abandon my studies in order to give my wife the opportunity to pursue her education. While Misha pursued his passion for science, I took on the responsibilities of caring for our child, doing household chores, and fulfilling the role of a mother. I didn't complain though, as I willingly sacrificed my own career to support Misha's dream of becoming a civil engineer. Eventually, my wife obtained her diploma and returned to her hometown. Our son Yura had already reached the age of 6 and was starting school. Misha found employment at a design office, which later transformed into a successful construction company. It became apparent that Michelle was not only capable, but also talented in her engineering skills. Within 5 years, she became the deputy director of capital construction, and a few years later, she held the position of vice president while also owning 30% of the company's shares. My wife, once a simple girl, had transformed into a successful businesswoman. Meanwhile, I continued working as a lathe operator and occasionally indulged in playing music at a restaurant in the evenings, attempting to fulfill my unrealized dream of being a musician. The years passed by quickly, resembling the speed of a courier train. The time had arrived for Yura to finish school and prepare for university. He had made the decision to follow in my footsteps and pursue a career as a mechanical engineer. My wife, firmly established within her company and holding a position on the board of directors, also took charge of our family. Lately, Michelle persistently advised me to change my occupation, subtly hinting her dissatisfaction with being married to Amir Turner. She believed I was beneath her social standing. At one point, she even offered me a job within her company, but I firmly declined, content with the life I had. I valued my position at work as an excellent specialist, and playing music in the evenings brought warmth to my soul. Above all, I found joy in my son's accomplishments, which brought me immense happiness. I must say, my son and I shared a close bond. He confided in me about everything, including his relationship with a girlfriend. It was evident that their love had blossomed into something great. The girl was undeniably beautiful, but there was one flaw. She came from an orphanage. This revelation caused quite a scandal in our household. Blaming my parenting, my spouse exclaimed, "You spoil Yura. What kind of girl is this? A mere orphan. Our son deserves someone better. Our friends have daughters who would make perfect matches for Yura. Or do you want him to end up as a simple laborer like you?" Hearing these words, I quietly left the room. I later approached my son and told him, "Think for yourself. You're an adult, and it's your life. No matter what decision you make, I will support you." On a few occasions, my wife insisted that I accompany her to social events. However, I felt out of place among the well-dressed and sophisticated crowd. Their scornful and surprised gazes confirmed that I didn't belong there. Sensing my discomfort, Michelle eventually stopped dragging me along. We had moved to a country house after leasing our apartment for 5 years. Shortly after, Yura left for the capital, leaving our house empty. This left my wife and I alone. I was already 46, while Misha was a year younger. She decided to celebrate her 45th birthday on a grand scale. Renting out the best restaurant in town for the entire evening, she invited guests from her social circle. Standing at the entrance to the banquet hall, my wife greeted the guests while I humbly collected their gifts and handed them to her assistants. I quickly caught sight of him, a young man dressed impeccably in a cream suit that accentuated his athletic physique. His sun-kissed face was complemented by his blonde hair. There was an air of sophistication and arrogance about him, particularly when he glanced at me. But it was when he looked at Misha that his eyes filled with desire and adoration. Holding her hand tightly, he began delivering a congratulatory speech, locking eyes with her. He then tenderly kissed her fingers and gently squeezed her palm before turning his attention to me. "You have a charming wife. Take care of her," he casually remarked, nodding before sauntering off to mingle with other guests. I shifted my gaze towards my wife. Her eyes glistened with joy. Confused, I sought an explanation. With an air of superiority, she condescended to me and revealed, "That's our client, Edward Shumsky. We're building a residential complex for him." Her thoughts seemed distant, and throughout the evening, Michelle was surrounded by admirers, with Shumsky hardly leaving her side. They conversed sweetly, danced, and engaged with the other guests. It felt as though Michelle had forgotten that she had a husband. Impatiently, I awaited the end of the celebration. From my vantage point, I observed Michelle bidding Shumsky a warm farewell, escorting him until he left. That's when I realized I was losing my wife. It wasn't about infidelity or suspicions. The heart can't be deceived. There was something more than just a client-contractor relationship between them. A month after Michelle's birthday, as I returned home from work, my heart sank at the sight of a large black car parked outside our house. A man and a woman were passionately kissing by the car, with her arms wrapped tightly around his neck. It came as no surprise when I recognized the woman as my wife. And of course, the lucky gentleman was none other than Mr. Shumsky. Michelle suddenly caught sight of me, and her reaction was immediate. She pulled away from her lover in shock. "Yura, is that really you?" she said disappointedly. I reached out and took her hand. "Misha, let's go home," I pleaded, attempting to lead my wife away. But Shumsky, with a scornful and mocking tone, interjected, "Buddy, can't you see she doesn't want to go with you?" Two burly guards appeared behind him, positioned as if ready to take action. Shumsky's tone turned threatening as he demanded, "Let the woman go and get out of here." Michelle remained silent as tension filled the air. I struggled to maintain my composure. "And don't forget, she is still my wife. I asserted, though I could feel the guards closing in on me from both sides. In a moment of snapped restraint, I released Michelle's hand and swiftly turned around, delivering a powerful kick to one of the guards' kneecap with my right leg. He crumbled to the ground with a resounding thud. Then, swiftly redirecting my attention to the second guard, I struck him forcefully with a punch to the bridge of his nose using my right hand. The bodyguard was sent flying, his head connecting with the car, and then slowly sliding to the pavement. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the driver attempting to exit the vehicle with a baseball bat. Determined, I kicked open the car door, causing the brave man to slump back into the seat, clutching his broken nose. Throughout this swift and sudden chaos, Michelle and her lover stood frozen, oblivious to the unfolding events. Shumsky looked at me with sheer horror, his mouth agape, waiting for his turn to be dealt with. Michelle tightly clung to his sleeve. "Yura, go home. I'll join you soon," she spoke in a trembling voice filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Don't provoke a bloodbath." I turned and, without removing my clothes, made my way into the house. In the kitchen, I tried to pour myself some vodka to steady my trembling hands. I struggled so much that I had to resort to drinking directly from the bottle's neck. Michelle stood in the doorway, visibly shaken. "We need to talk," she exclaimed. I sighed, expecting this conversation to come sooner or later. "Yura, I met someone," Michelle confessed, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and guilt. "And I fell in love with him. We've been together for 6 months now, and I can't continue deceiving you. I'm going to be with him. I'll explain everything to our son myself. I think I deserve some happiness as a woman. You're a good man, but you've become stagnant. You have no prospects, and frankly, you've become boring. Our marriage, our relationship, has outgrown its purpose." She paused, waiting for my response, but I remained silent, stone-faced. "I want a successful man by my side," Michelle continued, her voice turning more emotional. "A man with whom I share common interests. A man who can fulfill me," she concluded, her words hanging in the air. I interrupted her monologue, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Don't waste your breath. I understand. Go." Shock and disappointment registered on Michelle's face. She couldn't believe that my reaction was so unperturbed. "Is that it? You're not going to say anything else?" she asked, a mix of disbelief and hurt in her voice. "What more is there to say?" I replied, my gaze falling on the half-empty bottle in front of me. "It's clear. Go." As she processed my words, Michelle started rambling, trying to convince me that we could still remain on good terms. "We spent a quarter of a century together," she pleaded. "We don't have to be strangers. We can still be civil to each other." I looked at her, regret and sadness in my eyes. "I'm leaving now," I said calmly. "You can stay here. It's your place too." Michelle continued to talk, but I turned away, leaving the house without another word. It became apparent that trying to salvage our marriage was futile. Love couldn't be forced, and fighting for it only made the pain worse. It was a shame that so many years were wasted, but perhaps it was time to accept that it was for the best. Although, I didn't get drunk or fall into a drunken stupor. Instead, a feeling of resentment lingered in my heart. I couldn't understand how someone could just leave after being together for so long. The reasons were clear, though. I didn't fit into her social circle, lacked education and manners, and had nothing to show for myself without a college degree. Why dwell on the past? There was no turning back, and honestly, I didn't want to. It was easier to erase that chapter of my life and start anew. Age shouldn't define or judge me at 46. That night, I sought refuge at my parents' house. I didn't share much about my misfortune with them, and they didn't pry either. My mother was naturally upset, but she didn't bother me. Sleep evaded me that night, so I found solace in the window, smoking and inhaling the mixture of cigarette smoke and cold air. It allowed me to collect my thoughts. The next morning, my son Yura called. His voice oozed with concern as he asked, "Daddy, are you really getting a divorce? Have you been drinking heavily?" He urged me to talk to Mom, to apologize, confident that she would forgive me because she loved me. I tried to explain that it wasn't that simple. she found someone else. Yura's voice dripped with sadness and disappointment, sending a shiver through my core. Son, please don't be too quick to judge. She's your mother, no matter what happens, and she loves you. All of this is about our relationship, not you. I reassured him, doing my best to calm his troubled emotions. We are connected, you and I. Your pain is my pain. I grew up in your embrace, and I will not abandon you for the sake of pleasing someone. Yura's voice trailed off, overcome with anger. Daddy, don't worry. She's not worth it. I'll be there soon. Misha interjected before Yura could finish. Misha, what's with these demands of yours? You're an adult now. Sometimes we have to accept life as it is. Why must we argue? Misha's tone took on a mentoring quality. Yura couldn't bear to listen any longer. The words were unbearable. Misha continued calling, but finally, Yura silenced the phone. 2 days later, Yura arrived at the house. Papa, I was at my mom's. I tried talking to her, but she called that man. She said she had no secrets from the man she loved. She referred to him as her lover. What is this? Why is she doing this to us? Yura spoke, his voice hollow. Tears streamed down his face. Her boyfriend, he just smirked the entire time. Then he even hugged her. Yura's emotions overwhelmed him. I don't have a mother anymore. I hate that woman. Yura's words couldn't be swayed. It was up to him to make his own decision. 2 months later, our marriage ended in divorce. Michelle wasted no time, and within 6 months, she was already married to Mr. Shumsky. She attempted to contact Yura, but he never returned her calls. The wedding turned out to be quite the lavish affair, held at the fanciest restaurant in town. Mr. Shumsky seemed to have won quite the prize. The event was graced by numerous guests, including popular pop singers and members of high society. However, rumors circulated that the bride's mother spent the entire time in tears and left early, accompanied by her father. As for Michelle's son, he stubbornly refused to attend, despite her persistent efforts to convince him. Even Mr. Shumsky himself approached Yura, desperately requesting his support for his new wife's sake. Later that evening, as the wedding festivities continued, I strolled along the deserted pathway of an old, abandoned park. Darkness gradually enveloped the surroundings, accompanied by a chilling north wind that attempted to dislodge the damp, yellow leaves from the asphalt. The streetlights flickered to life, casting my shadow from one to the next, like the passing of a baton. It was a disgusting feeling. Disgusted that I had spent so many years with a deceitful, manipulative woman. Surprisingly, I found myself calm, devoid of any despair or regret. The experience of family life had inoculated me, leaving the future uncertain and unpredictable.